We're going to do a little series here, a little brief series, and hopefully by the end of the series, we'll have everybody back. All right, that's what we're praying for. So a very short, brief series. This isn't a 52-part series or anything. I'm not that pessimistic. But hopefully by the end, we'll all be together. And I wanted to kind of riff off what we talked about last week, which is Jesus rose again, didn't he? And we know that he spent 40 days around talking to people, teaching people, showing people, and then he rose up into heaven with a promise that he will, in the same manner, come again, right? So we know that that is in our future. Jesus is coming again. And sometimes I think we get in this mindset that that's when things get good, right? We're waiting for that day. In the meantime, it's just all terrible. Everything's horrible, nothing good. God doesn't do anything for us. He's never there. But that's not true, is it? In fact, we know from Ephesians that it says when Jesus ascended into heaven, he left gifts for men. He left us stuff when he left so that we could get through this grind called life. So we get through the difficult times that he knew we and the disciples were going to go through. And one of those things we're going to look at today is one of those great gifts and things he left behind was, you can tell by the songs, peace. He says, I leave you my peace so you can get through. So no matter what we're going through in this life, if it is a pandemic or it may be something more, you realize people are going through other difficult things too at the same time. I know the news will only talk about one thing, but there are many, many things people are going through right now. And it seems like the pandemic just makes it harder. But no matter what we're going through, we can have peace. And it reminds me of the man who had to get up early in the morning for his job. So he'd always go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. And one of the things he couldn't stand is being a light sleeper. He couldn't stand any interruptions at all, and he was up like a light. When you go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and you're a light sleeper, you're going to have some problems. So he was always out there yelling at the kids, go home, get off the streets, stop yelling and screaming out there. He was always yelling at the traffic, what these trucks going on, calling this mayor saying, get these trucks off the road, they're making too much noise, always yelling and screaming until one day he said, okay, I've had it, and he put these earplugs in. Double earplugs. He just packed them on there so he could hear what? Nothing. He said, now I've got peace. Then he realized that light, sunlight, it's just really annoying. And it's always coming in my room, so he put blankets over and other things. And finally he went and he bought these blackout things to just keep all the light out. And he said, now I can finally have peace. But then at night he noticed that like when a cop car would come through or some kind of fire truck or something, that flashing light would actually come through the cracks. And that would just wake him up. So he said, this is ridiculous. So he got a blindfold. So he put a blindfold completely on. He says, now I can get some peace. So he's finally getting some sleep, and then a dog comes in. He's got this big dog, just pushes open the door, comes in and jumps on the bed. Every night the dog would come in and jump on the bed. He's like, this is ridiculous. I can't get any sleep. So he put the dog down in the basement. Okay, now I can finally get some sleep. But he couldn't turn his mind off. And he started thinking, oh no, now that I can't see and I can't hear, somebody's going to break into the house. Somebody's going to come into the house and I won't know it. So he nailed up all his windows, put bars over the windows, bars over the doors, completely shut 5 locks on every door, just completely locked himself in. He says, now I can have some peace. Then the worries began. He couldn't shut his mind off. So he got one of those great things that aromatherapy, just filled the room with wonderful scents, and he could finally get some sleep. And he said, now I've got it. Now I have perfect peace. Well, that night, a fire started in the house. And his neighbors called him, but he couldn't what? Hear it. They knocking on the door, but they couldn't what? Hear it. The dog was barking, but he couldn't hear it. And then the dog was bouncing on the door, and nothing was happening. He couldn't get in. And the firemen came, and they were trying to knock on the door, but it was all locked up. Couldn't get through the windows, couldn't get everything. And the man died. May he what? Rest in peace. And he finally had his peace. Why am I telling this horrible, horrible story? By the way, the dog was fine. The policemen were able to get him out. He's okay. So just nobody call, right? The dog is fine. Just the man died. Why? Because the way of peace is not shutting ourselves off from the world. That will not get us true peace. Because no matter what we do, no matter how much we try to shut out the world, shut out problems, get away from problems, the storms will still come, won't they? The problems will still come. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how popular you are. It doesn't matter how much influence you have. It doesn't even matter how good a Christian you are. Problems will find you. And the trick to peace is not eliminating problems. It is instead learning to what? Have peace in them. And that is the kind of peace that Jesus is talking about. He doesn't promise his disciples that, oh, everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. You're not going to have any trouble. In fact, he promises the opposite. But in this world, even in spite of all the things going on, in spite of all the troubles, you can still have what? Peace. In fact, let's go take a look at it. Let's go to John chapter 14, verse 27. We read it as part of our responsive reading today, but let's read it again. John chapter 14, verse 27. Jesus talking to his disciples, and by the way, does he know what the disciples are going to go through in their life? Of course, he's God, right? Does he know as he looks at James that he's going to be the first to be killed for his faith in Jesus Christ? Looking at John, does he see that he's going to be exiled? Does he see Peter and know he's going to be beaten and thrown into prison? Does he know the troubles that they're going to go through amongst their family and friends and the Pharisees and the people? He knows everything they're going to go through, but he says this. Verse 27 of chapter 14, peace I leave with you. My gift to you is peace. Again, not peace from I'm taking away all your problems. I'm not going to have any problems with anybody. No, that's not the peace we're talking about. It is peace in spite of what we go through. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. It is whose peace? God's peace, not the world's peace. The world does look for peace in eliminating problems, or just having more stuff, or just finding some comfort food. Who would love to just go out to eat someplace and get some comfort food right now? It'd be great. They try to find peace in things of this world, but that's not the long-standing peace. That is not the peace that lasts. He says, I give you God's true peace. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. And God's peace, even in spite of everything going on, can give us a peace where our very heart and soul are at peace, where our mind is at peace, if we let it take control. And that is the gift that he gave. In fact, let's go to the end of his conversation with them, back to chapter 16. Verse 33. From that point on, as he says, I'm leaving you my peace, he talks about how they are going to have trouble. They're going to be taken before the council. They're going to be ratted out by even family members. They're going to be thrown in prison. They're going to have troubles, which is kind of a funny thing to say after I leave you my peace. But again, even in all of that, they can have peace. And he finishes it up with verse 33. These things I have spoken unto you. I'm telling you all the problems you're going to have and that it's going to be difficult. I tell you these things that in me you might have what? Peace. In who? In God. In me you might have peace. That you may be able to, even though it seems like the storms around you are raging, it seems like you have no footing, it seems like everything is going wrong and there's nothing you can do about it. We still have that rock, don't we? We still have that anchor. And he says, in me you will have peace. In fact, look what he says next. In the world you shall have tribulation. Should be no surprise. He promises it. How many like promises of God? I love promises of God. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. I shall meet every need. Oh, those are wonderful promises. This is a promise too, isn't it? This promises that we will have struggles. But what? But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And it's a peace that can actually bring what? Even cheer, even joy into our life, knowing that no matter what's going on, God has us. There are better days ahead, but even now, is God walking with us? Does God know what we're going through? In fact, we have a God in Jesus Christ who went through bad things, didn't he? So he understands what it's like to be betrayed. He understands what it's like to be in a difficult relationship. He understands what it's like to lose people and things. He knows these things, doesn't he? He knows exactly what you're going through. Yet he can bring you peace in knowing he is in control. I have overcome the world. Past tense. He's already done it, hasn't he? And he will get us through, won't he? So, one of my favorite stories. Let's go back to Psalm chapter 3. What kind of peace can we have? Go back to Psalm 3. We've done a study before of the life of David. And David, a man truly beloved of God, of course. One blessed of God from a young age. A man of great faith in God. Yet, did he have problems? Yeah, you're not king and don't have any problems, right? In fact, this particular psalm, Psalm 3, is when he had to flee from his own son, Absalom. Now, I don't know, people may have family problems, but to have your son try to dethrone you by killing you, that's bad family relationships, right? That's a rough time. But look what he writes. David writes, can he possibly have peace? Especially when he knows part of it's his fault. Remember, a lot of this came about because of his infidelity, and all becomes part of the sin and just the problems that result from sin. A lot of it's his fault. He could have just not let peace come, but he did. Verse 1 of Psalm 3, Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be, which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. Give up. It's too much. Your own son's trying to kill you. The enemy's trying to kill you. The people don't want you anymore. Absalom had soured the entire nation against him. Give up, David. God is against you. You ever feel like that? Verse 3. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter up of mine head. Be not afraid, be not dismayed, for the Lord is with us, isn't he? Our God is with us, watching out for us. He is still our God, isn't he? Does he ever give up on us? No. Don't give up on him. Verse 4, I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. If we cry unto the Lord and say, Lord, let me just tell you what I'm going through. This is hard. I can't make it anymore. I'm not strong enough. Will he listen? Will he remind us that he is strong enough? And what happens? Because he cried unto the Lord, verse 5. I love verse 5. I laid me down and what? Slept. I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. As I get older, I understand more and more the beauty of those words. I laid me down and I slept. What does that mean? All the fear was gone. All the worry was gone. And I can lay myself down and my head is not racing. My heart is not filled with trouble. My soul is not aching. Instead, I slept knowing God has got me, and I woke knowing God sustained me. And you know what he will do the next day? Sustain you again. And you know what he'll do the next night? Sustain you again. And get you through the next day and the next day and the next day. It doesn't matter. God will provide, won't he? He will watch over us. And he slept and he awoke. refreshed. Can we find that kind of peace in the middle of a storm? How? It's a big how. How? How can I access this peace? It's a great gift. It's a gift of God, I believe, but how can I possibly have that kind of peace when we're going through everything I'm going through right now? Well, same way David did. Do you notice what he did? I cried unto the Lord. And that's where we need to go. In fact, let's go to Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Very familiar passage. Philippians 4, 6 and 7. Says what? Be careful for nothing. That word careful is anxious. Don't have anxiety about anything. You say, well, look at all the stuff going on in the world. What do you mean don't be anxious? Look at all the stuff going on in my life. What do you mean don't be anxious? No, that's an option we have. If God says don't do it, then we can not do it, right? He will give us the power to not do it. Be anxious for nothing. Be careful for nothing. Don't worry about anything. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known unto God. Take it to God and say, Lord, now by the way, does God already know you got this problem? Does He already know what you're going through? Yes, God knows everything. So who is this really helping? Vent. That's one of the greatest things about David. How many of his psalms start with, God, why are you doing this to me? God, this is terrible. Why would you let this happen? Why would you let that happen? You're doing a terrible job, God. Vent. God's big. He can take it. Let Him know what you're going through. Let Him know your anxiety. Let Him know your frustration. Let Him know your dismay. Let Him know. Get it off your chest. Let Him take it. And then do what? Let go. And let God take it, right? Look what he says next, verse 7. And the peace of God which passes all understanding. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that I just say, God help me, or God take care of this, and all of a sudden I can have peace when nothing has changed. You going to God and saying, this is a struggle. I can't get through this whole pandemic thing. I can't stay one more day in my house. I can't go through this anymore. Just saying that actually doesn't change the pandemic, does it? It doesn't change the fact you have to stay home. It doesn't change the fact you can't go out to a movie or anything like that and get some release. No. But what does it do? It changes your soul. It changes your heart. It changes your mind. And allows you to have peace in the midst of a storm. And the peace of God which passes all understanding shall keep your hearts and your minds through Christ Jesus. Do you have peace in your heart and your soul and your mind today? If you don't, where do you need to go? Go to God. Say, Lord, yeah, if you can change it, Lord, fine, great, yes. Stop the storm, that'd be great, that'd be wonderful. Get us all out of here, that'd be great, but you may have a plan here. Give me peace, right? Grant me your peace, God's peace, and which can even bring cheer in the midst of a storm. Lord, let me have your peace in my heart and my soul and my mind today, and let that peace wash over you. Bring it to Him with prayer and supplication. Let go, let God, right? Let Him take care of it. Let's see some examples of that. Let's go to Matthew chapter 8. 3 quick examples, all involving a storm. I've said this before. As we go to heaven someday, and we have the new heaven and the new earth, and Jesus says, hey, Brian, do you want to go on a boat ride? How many of you would think twice? I don't know. In the Bible, it seems like every time he got on a boat with somebody, what happened? There was a storm, and I get seasick. I'm hoping in glory, the glorified Brian will not get seasick, but you just never know. So here we go. There's going to be a storm. Matthew chapter 8, we're going to start in verse 23. And when he, Jesus, was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch the ship was covered with the waves, but Jesus was what? Asleep. Why was Jesus asleep? Because he had peace. There's no storm big enough to shake God, is there? There's no pandemic, there's no earthquake, there's no storm. There is nothing that is too big to shake God. And Jesus was asleep. And what were the disciples doing? Verse 25. And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us. We're dying. Other passages say how they were just bailing water. Now these are seasoned fishermen, most of them. They knew about storms. They knew this sea. They knew what it was like, and yet they were scared for their life. And then they look at Jesus and say, what? And we can feel this way sometimes. God doesn't what? Doesn't care. God's asleep. Yeah, I mean, this storm may not shake him, but it's shaking me pretty good, right? I'm feeling it. And they came to him and they woke him up and said, what? Hey, don't you care that we're dying here? Don't you care that we perish? And what did Jesus say? Verse 26. And he saith unto them, why are you fearful, O ye of little faith? We need to have faith in God. Does God care? Does he care about everything you're going through? Even if it's your fault, does he care what you're going through? Yes. Yes, he does. He hates to see his children suffer. He hates to see them go through these things, right? He knows what we're going through. But we have to have faith not in ourselves, not in our ability to get through these things. Don't put your faith in little things like yourself or the government or the world or science. Don't put your faith in little things. Put your faith in who? In God. Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Can God stop it whenever he wants to? So if it's going on, it must be part of a plan, right? So we have to just say, okay, if this is what we have to go through, let me, Lord, have what? Peace. And knowing you do care, you know exactly what's going on, you know exactly how much we can take. Lord, I put it into your hands. Don't let the storm overwhelm you. God does care, and God is aware, isn't he? And God will get us through. Let's go to the next storm. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. Matthew chapter 14, we're going to start in verse 22. Now this is right after Jesus had fed the 5,000, which was right after they found out that John the Baptist had been beheaded. It was not a good day. Rough start. Jesus just wanted to be alone with his disciples, wanted to go off by himself and pray. John the Baptist was very dear to him. It was very sad to hear that he had died. He was troubled. So he was going to go do what? Talk to his Father. By the way, if Jesus needs to talk to his Father when his heart is troubled, guess who else needs to? We do. But he got there and there were all these people. 5,000 men plus women and children were following him. He taught them, healed them, spent all day, fed them with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, doing that great miracle. Got them all settled down. The disciples had their 12 baskets to take with them. Sent them out on a ship, and he went up to pray by himself, which is what he intended to do to begin with, right? And here in verse, we're going to pick a story up in verse 22. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. There again in the middle, and the other passages say they just rowed and rowed and rowed, and they just got nowhere. They were getting nowhere. It's a struggle sometimes. You ever feel like you're just getting nowhere? You're just fighting against it, fighting against it, fighting against it, just getting nowhere. And in their case, who wasn't there with them? Sometimes it's just, not that he doesn't care, but that he's not there. I'm having to fight this all by myself. That's why I'm getting nowhere. and we're fighting it all by ourselves, and we're getting nowhere, and it feels like God isn't there, what do you lose? You lose hope, don't you? But is Jesus actually ever not there? No. In fact, look what happened. Verse 25. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea, walking on the tumultuous sea, walking on the stormy sea. He came walking, which shows us something. Can anything stop God from being there for you? I don't know about you, but if I see people out on a ship in the middle of a storm, about to sink, and I'm on the shore and I have no boat, my first thought is, I hope they can swim. Because there's nothing I can do about it. What does Jesus say? I guess I'll walk across. Nothing stops God. He's always there, always able, isn't he? Look what it says, verse 26. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. Again, they couldn't believe their eyes. They didn't realize, they didn't even think for a moment it could be God. But can God always be there? And can God always help? Absolutely. But straightway Jesus spake to them, saying, be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid. Get your eyes off the storm and look at me. I am here. All they had to do was what? Call out. One of the other passages says that Jesus, while he was walking on the water, actually was going to walk right by them. It's like, they're fine. He knew they were going to be fine. Yeah, they have to struggle all night, but they'll get to the other side, right? He was just going to walk on by. But instead, they what? Called in. And we have to do the same thing. God will let us struggle. He knows we're going to get through it. He will let us struggle. Sometimes we've got to be humble enough to say what? Lord, help. And the peace can come faster that way, can't it? Verse 28. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. So we're going to get now in verse 28. That should be a dash. Sorry about that. So Peter says, well, if it is you, then you could let me come out and walk in there too. And that's true. Is God with you? Just back it up a little bit. Is God with you in the midst of the storm? And if he is with you in the midst of the storm, what limits you in the storm? Nothing. Can you run in the midst of the storm? Can you excel in the midst of a storm? Can you be great in the midst of the storm? Can you have cheer in the midst of the storm? You can do anything in the midst of the storm if God is with you, and God is always what? With you. Let that peace roll over you. And he says, hey, if it's you, let me come out there and walk on water with you. And what does Jesus say? Well, come on. Come on out. By the way, that's gutsy. That first step would be a little difficult, wouldn't it? But he did. He stepped out of the boat. Verse 29. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Can we get through these storms? Can we even be great in these storms? Can we even have cheer during these storms? Yes, because God is with us, isn't he? Call to him and trust him, right? But what happened next? Verse 30. But when Peter saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore did thou doubt? What does cause us to doubt in the storm is we get our eyes off who? Eyes off God, off how big he is, how powerful he is, and we start looking at the problems, don't we? We look at the issues going on around us. We listen to the news. Don't do that. So everybody should put on their TV. Go home today, put this on your TV. Wherever you watch the news, on your radio, if you're doing the radio, put a big old sign that says, God is in control. So no matter what those yahoos say, you will remember that who is in control? God is in control. Keep your eyes on him, no matter what you're going through. And he will get you through. Because sometimes it does feel like the storm is too big. But there's no such thing as too big when there's God, right? God is bigger. God will take care of us. Plus, we know how it ends, don't we? I don't know about you, but I've been missing baseball. Nationals won the World Series last year. It was very exciting. And Masson, they did a wonderful thing. They ran all the games of last year's postseason. So the games against the Dodgers and the Cardinals, and even the one-game play-in with Milwaukee, and then the World Series where the Astros cheated, but Nationals won anyways. Documented fact. So they run. The funny thing is, I'll turn them on, I'm watching, and the Nationals are down by 3 runs in the 7th inning, and I'm nervous. But then I think, well, that's dumb, because I know they win this game. I actually know they win this game. Why am I nervous? Why am I worried? What am I? Oh no, there's a man on second and third with no outs, and they didn't score in the 7th. Oh no, it's over. I know they scored 4 runs in the 8th. Why am I so concerned? Same goes here, folks. Why are we so nervous about what's going on around here? Why are we so worried? Do we know how it ends? Jesus said, I have overcome the world. We know we get to the other side of the sea safely. We know it's going to be okay. So call to Him, pray to Him, talk to Him, just to remind yourself that He is still in control and everything's going to be okay. Know that peace that God left for us. In fact, everybody go quickly to Psalm 23. We all know it. But let's remember that Jesus, because He is risen again, because He is alive, because He's watching over us, is the good shepherd, isn't He? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not what? Want. God will take care of it. Don't let anything worry about the things of this world. Don't worry about it. God's got it under control, doesn't He? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Sometimes it feels like we're in a dry land. There's nothing good to eat. There's no good water to drink. We're not going to get what we need. But who is watching over us? Who is leading us? Who will lead us to the good pastures? Who will lead us to the still waters? Who will lead us to the valley of the shadow of death? Who will allow us to sit down and eat with our enemies? Who will anoint our head with oils? Who will have our cup of blessing overflowing? Who will follow us with goodness and mercy all the days of our life and then take us home to be with Him? It's Jesus Christ, our great shepherd, who is with us every step of the way. So we need not fear. We need not be troubled. But oh, we are. You know why we are? Because we're human. So what do we need to do? Don't try to solve it yourself. Don't just sit there and say, I will not worry. Take it to God. Let Him know you are troubled. Let Him know you are worried. Don't try to cut yourself off the world, get rid of all the problems. There's no such thing. We will have tribulation. Go to the Lord and say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. I have a troubled soul. I have a troubled heart. I have a troubled mind. Lord, please grant me your what? Peace. The peace that passes all understanding will guard our hearts and our mind in Christ Jesus. That is a promise of God. Troubles will come. Let His gift of peace overwhelm you each and every day. Call to Him. Go to Him. Trust Him. Know that He is in control. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank You for Your word.